Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. Is anybody here? Sorry about that. Took me a second to get it going here. Give another minute or so for anybody to come on. Let me know in the comments if you hop on the right-hand side. Comments are enabled, so you should be good to go. Gonna hang out for a second. Let's see what we got here. Let me know in the comments on the right if you're here. Comments are enabled. Welcome, welcome. We got somebody on. Let's see. Hello, everyone. Just typing in the comments on the right-hand side. If for some reason I don't see your comments, I'll let you know. And in that case, type in your comments below the screen in the video, and we'll go from there. Or I will answer your questions after the live stream. Either way, I'll get to them. But good morning, good morning. And I'm going to talk about marathon training today. Rushik, how you doing, man? How are you, bud? How are you? How are you? Good morning. Good morning. Where are you from? Where are you from, Rushik? And am I pronouncing your name right? I hope I am. Yeah, we're going to talk about marathon training today. Just some of the important components of it. And if you have questions along the way, put them in the comments on the right. The comments are working. I see Rushik's comment. And again, if you have any comments or questions at all, I'll be here to answer them live time on the fly, so we can talk about marathon training. And I want to just go over a bunch of components of marathon training that are important. FG, good morning. How important is marathon pace in training? As you know, the marathon pace can be too fast or too slow for training. Well, you're right. I mean, it is important. Rushik from India. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And hopefully you'll continue to learn from him. But all right, so FG, marathon pace is important, but it depends on how much you do. But what's most important is depending on your fitness, and it's important to find out what your current fitness is. And there are certain ways you can do that, okay? Now, with marathon training, it's slightly different because you're training for a much longer race, but one of the things I emphasize in a lot of my videos and recommend is people doing a time trial of 1 mile or even sometimes 2 miles. If you're training for a marathon, you can even do 2 miles or 5K. But what it does is it helps set your training paces based on your current fitness, because training at your current paces is what's important. And depending on what your goals are for the marathon, training at the right pace is going to help you kind of set yourself up for everything. And that means knowing what the paces are for easy runs, steady runs, marathon pace. Let's say you're at this for mile, 3K, 5K, right? This is where you should be for the marathon. So based on what you've run for these particular events right now or time trials, and it helps you set your training pace. I actually have a video on that, and I encourage you to take a look. It's a 1 mile time trial video on how to set the right paces based on what you run for these time trials. Because particularly when you train for the marathon, and Rushik, I'll get to your question next. But when you train for the marathon, being as precise as possible is very important, because it's not like a 5K where you can come back the following week and do it again. If you have an off day. Marathon, you've got to be as kind of precise with a lot of things as possible. So training at the appropriate training paces that are based on your current fitness is very, very, very important. It also minimizes the potential of you getting sick or injured. So, and with regards to marathon pace, it depends. Again, if you're a beginner and you're just kind of working your way into training for a marathon for the first time, your marathon pace is kind of going to be your marathon pace. You have to get used to things like the long run and semi-long run and stuff like that. But you can figure out your fitness. And if you're starting from scratch, then I wouldn't do any, I would just build into your paces. I would give you at least 6 weeks of basic fitness base running before you try kind of a marathon time trial. Not a mile time trial, because then it'll give you a little bit more of an accurate indicator of your fitness, and it'll help you adjust your training paces. So let me know if that makes sense. FG, and again, but I encourage you to watch those 2 videos. They're in my channel. I've got 200 plus videos, but the 1 mile time trial and how to set the right training pace based on what you run for that because that answers a lot of questions for you. It makes sure that you're training in the right zones for everything, workouts, long runs, and stuff. Now, keep in mind, if you're training for a hilly marathon, it's a little bit different. There's pace fluctuation, so it's important to simulate as much as you can. So run your long runs over rolling if it's available. If it's a flat marathon, then you do, a lot of your runs or even workouts on the flats, just to try to simulate as much as possible. So hopefully that's helpful. Strength training, Rushik, is important. Functional strength training should be running specific. Yeah, I know, I don't blame you. And I'm actually working on a 10 to 15 minute strength training routine that's specific to runners. That's not overly time consuming, that you won't need a ton of equipment for, hardly any equipment. So be on the lookout for that. But it is important to kind of build a foundation of strength to protect your joints, especially if you're training for the marathon. But so is, if you have the access to softer surfaces, I encourage you to take a look at that as well. Train on softer surfaces if you can. It's more forgiving on your legs. But be on the lookout for that, Rushik. It's coming. I will have one of those videos out shortly. Dimitri, how you doing, man? Got to ask me several questions. Okay. So you're training for 3:30. How fast should my 6 times 1 mile repeat workout with 2-minute recovery? Well, with 2-minute recovery, let's see. If you want to do VO2 max, and it should be at least 3-minute recovery, and in that case, 3:30 is 8 minutes per mile right on the button. If you're doing a VO2 max workout, then they should be between 7 and 7:10 per rep. But that's what it'd be a 3 to 4 minute recovery. With 2-minute recovery, I'd be going 7:30 to 7:40 per rep, about 20 to 30 seconds faster. That's a little bit of a shorter recovery. So that's a workout right there. Sub 6 times 7 minute mile enough? It is enough. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's plenty in terms of that. You want to be building towards other workouts as well, 2-mile reps and maybe 5K reps, or progression runs where you progress from 90 seconds slower, which is 9:30 per mile, all the way down to marathon pace, which is 8 minutes per mile in your case as a goal. So there's a lot of components, but mile repeats is an important workout. But again, the recovery component, keep it. If you want to do VO2 max and you want to run them around 7 minutes, do it with 3 to 4 minute recovery. If you want to do 2-minute recovery, I would suggest doing around 7:30, 7:20 to 7:30, right around ballpark 7:30 per mile. It's a little bit of a different emphasis there. So hopefully that's helpful. You're also training for 3:30. Ziad, hey man, that's great. If you have any questions, let me know. 3:30 is 8 minutes per mile. So, and right on the button. So you could do workouts. You could do mile repeats. Then you'd start at marathon pace and progress towards half marathon pace. Or you could do speed fartlek, which is like a very important component to training. I like to do anywhere between 16 to 20 or 24 times 1 minute hard and 1 minute easy, and that's at about 7 minute per mile pace or even faster. So it's a good way of promoting speed development. That's something I would do every 3 weeks for marathon training. Even do part of your long runs, and you start to build in marathon pace into your long run. So you do let's say you have a 16-mile long run, you build 4 to 6 to 8 miles of it at marathon pace. You want to get used to that marathon pace as much as you possibly can. So you incorporate it there. You can do continuous runs, 10 miles. At any point in time, you should be able to run 10 miles at goal marathon pace. So if it's 3:30, it's 8 minutes per mile, and it should feel comfortable. But then you want to build out from there. So Samir, same here, but you can run a sub 140 half, but not even close to sub 3:30. So that suggests that progression runs that would come in handy, increasing your long runs or increasing the quality of your long runs, making sure that you're training at the right paces for your easy runs and your steady runs. So are you doing that? Speed development could be a component too. Are you incorporating that? So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that go into it, but particularly at this point, long run. And you want to build up to at least 20 miles. But if you do that, you should be around 55 to 60 miles per week minimum. I wouldn't approach 20 miles unless you're up to that. And then you just have to increase from there if you can. Trying to get to maybe 2 20-mile long runs before the marathon is a good idea as well. You need to know what it feels like to be out there for an extended period of time. And I've talking about semi-long run too, which should be anywhere between 60 and 75% of your long run. So if you're up to a 20-mile long run, there should be another run out there that you're running maybe 13 or 14 miles continuously. And that can be a progression run too. So you need to know what it feels like to be out on your feet continuously for an extended period of time. And a semi-long run is good to do every other week if you have the time to do it. and the ability to do it. Barely broke 4. Well, that means enhancing some of your your threshold stuff, your aerobic stuff, progression runs, long runs. If you're barely under 4, then what are your long runs? What pace are your long runs? Are you training at the right paces? You might want to think of the progression run or the semi-long run too, because it sounds like you might need to just enhance the aerobic side a little bit to help you get there. FG, how many miles at marathon pace? So the marathon pace sessions weekly are. It depends on where you're at. I mean, if you're giving yourself 16 weeks to train for the marathon, there should be something at marathon pace generally every week. But the longer stuff, maybe every 2 or 3 weeks. How many miles? If you can get up to the point where you're running 10 miles at marathon pace at any given time, early to mid-season, that's really good. There's a simulation run that I have people do. It's 14 or 15, in some cases even 16 miles at goal marathon pace, about 4 to 5 weeks out from the marathon. That tells you how ready you are, and then what you need to do to kind of put the finishing touches on your training to get there. So that's another one. What martial arts? So I have a 3rd degree black belt in Hapkido, which is a Korean art, a 3rd degree black belt in Tung Sudo, another Korean art, and I'm working on a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu as well. So not there yet, but I'm working on it. Samir. And Ziad, I did 60 miles per week for 338. Should I do 80 to 85 for 3? Well, no, I wouldn't go up that much. That's too much of an increase. I mean, if you did 60 miles per week, depends on how long you did it for, you'd go up to 65. At 60, no more than 70. There's no need to jump from 60 to 85. That's too drastic a jump right now. Everything's got to be gradual, and you stay there. Let your body adapt to the new distance, and then you kind of tinker with your training. But I wouldn't go any further. How fast should I be able to run your 20-mile long running coach? There's a couple of ways you can do it. So if you're looking for 3:30 again, which is 8 minutes, you can do a progression long run where you start at 90 seconds slower, which is 9:30 per mile. And you work your way down to 8 minutes per mile, or you could do a 20-mile long run. And I'm just using 20 as an example because you're not running 20 every week. You 20, and then you can do 8 or 10 miles of it at marathon pace. But there's a couple ways you can do it. Okay, you can do the marathon pace stuff in the beginning or the middle or the end of the long run. You need to know what it feels like to be running a marathon pace at all different times. So there are different ways you can utilize the long run, or that 90 to 95%, which is just a steady pace, which is 45 seconds to 75 seconds slower. So right here, if it's 8 minutes, you're running 8:45 to 9:15 for the whole entire long run. So there's different ways you can plug in long runs, but with long runs with marathon pace should be kind of spread out. It should be type of in the mid-season and towards the late season. You don't want to do too much of that too early. How fast and when training for 3:30 specifically? Yeah, I mean, those are the paces, Samir. Hopefully you found that helpful. Ziad for 325. Yeah, I mean, if the goal is to get, and this is a good point actually, Ziad. If your goal is to get under 330, then training for a 325 is. I like to give margin a little bit of cushion. So, and this is a good example of it. 325 being around a 750-ish or something like that. That's where you kind of give the margin of error, so that if you have a little bit of an off day and you run a little bit slower, you're still getting under the 330 or close to it. Recently ran 22-minute 5K and a 143 half. You're aiming to run 330 in January. Okay, so you have plenty of time. You have currently doing 60K per week, and with one long run and speed session, how much running should I be doing? Well, 60K per week? It depends on your lifestyle. Do you work full time? How much training can you handle? Do you recover well from 60K per week? You can reach out to me directly at blackbeltrunningcoach@gmail.com and give me an idea. You can send me what your training looks like, and I'll take a look at it, and I'll give you some feedback. So feel free to email me there at any point in time. So, or check out my Instagram page, Top of the Line Running. You can message me there as well, any of you guys, okay? So, and we can go into more specifics like this because I need to take a look at certain things of your, certain components of your training so I can give you better answers. So, but again, feel free to reach out to me directly. Do I know Coach Nate from the Run Dream Achieve channel? I do not, Dimitri. I don't know who that is. I'm not in California. I'm in New York. I'm on the East Coast. I'm from New York on the East Coast. And live in Pennsylvania now. FG, do you advise running half marathon 4 weeks from the marathon? No later than 4 weeks. I generally, and this is why I recommend a simulation run too, because sometimes depending on where our people are, there aren't always half marathons that are like 4 weeks out. So if you have one about 4 weeks out, it's a good idea to do. And obviously you add some warm up and cool down so that it still gets up to about 20 miles for the entire day. And if there's not a half marathon available, then a simulation run is ideal. You do 14 or 15 miles at marathon pace to see how ready you are. So either one is a good option, and it should be no later than 4 weeks out. No later. Who I think can beat Stipe. I mean, he can outfight him, but if he gets hit by Stipe, he's going to get knocked out. I think Stipe throws bombs, and 2:24, best for the marathon. 5 minutes, probably 5 minutes per. I was also in pretty good shape. I was in low 14-minute 5K shape. I was in a bunch of other shape as well. So 107 and 108, 107-ish for the half marathon, or 106 for the half marathon. So I was coming off of college where I was fit and running pretty well. And I was also running at that point about between 80 and 90 miles per week. 80 miles tend to be my max where I started to run my best. Anything over that, I didn't respond well to. So I kind of capped my training. I kept it between 70 and 80 per week. But there are points where I did 90 and 100, especially in college. How fast were you running VO2 max? Yeah, I'm about 5 minutes per mile, something like that, or a little bit faster, 4:55 to 5 minutes per mile. How accurate is the Yaso for marathon prediction? Relatively, it's a good workout to do, but it's not the only workout to do. And the Yaso 800s essentially are, if you're running 3:30, if your goal is to run 3:30, which is 8 minutes per mile, you're running 800-meter repeats in 3:30. And if you think about it, add them up at 7 minutes per mile, which is about a minute faster than marathon pace per mile, which is essentially VO2 max. You can start at Yaso and then build out from there. Build out from 800s. And this is the thing I advise folks, or I build folks up to maybe 8 reps of 800, and then you can transition to 1,000-meter repeats, 1,200s, and mile repeats. It's a way of branching out at VO2 max pace, just doing longer reps and more volume at that same VO2 max pace. So there's a lot of ways you can do it. Yeah, so 800s are good. I incorporate them, but again, it's not the only thing that I do, and I don't stay at 800. I move up, depending on my athletes that I'm working with, if they can handle it. Can I skip those brutal? Can I skip those brutal 5K intervals and stick to marathon pace less? I mean, you can, but 5K pace, you generally, that's what the speed fartlek is for. The 1 minute hard, 1 minute easy. You can keep that at 5K pace. You don't need to do anything much faster. You don't need to do mile repeats or 1,200s. Those are hard to do anyway. So that's what the shorter stuff, the speed fartleks, are 5K pace, and you can start doing VO2 max and building yourself out. But it is an important component. But if you're afraid of injuries, that's why I like to incorporate that speed fartlek. And again, you don't have to do 20 reps. You can do 10, 12, 14. It's still an important component of your training, but you do it in a way that works for you. Okay, because what you can handle is not the same as what everybody else can handle, and vice versa. So it has to work for you. Okay. What's your advice on how to fuel for marathons? Should long runs be fueled and not for, well, fluids, easily digestible fluids, and whether it be watered down Gatorade or just water or gels or something like that, it's good to practice them in long runs to simulate what the marathon's going to be like. Because if you're going to fuel in a marathon, you should be fueling in the long runs to help get that body used to easily digestible stuff that'll help give you energy throughout the race. Again, I don't recommend going any further than gels or water with sugar or watered down Gatorade, stuff like that. I mean, some folks will pick on things, but I generally don't recommend it. Don't want anything to sit in your stomach for a marathon, or you have to go to the bathroom during the marathon. But fueling is important. It's just and how often you do it, either every 3 miles or every 5 miles or something like that. And sipping instead of gulping is ideally as well. Even if you hold it for a few seconds, sip a little bit so that it goes down smoothly. But fueling is important, very, very important. And fat burning, I mean, the marathon training itself is going to be enough of a fat burning mechanism for you, FG. Best, most accurate test to know if someone is ready to break sub 3 hours. Well, I mean, it's half marathon. Your half marathon should be probably around 124 or so to get under 3 hours. And it should be a relatively comfortable, not hanging on for dear life half marathon. It should be relatively even run too. But a sub 124, a little bit faster, gives you a good idea on how ready you are for sub 3 hours. Prediction for Ngannou versus I don't know. Isn't Ngannou fighting Jones? I don't know. How many gels and water intake during? Yeah, it depends, Dimitri. I mean, I would start with every 5 miles, break it up into pieces a little bit every 5 miles. And if you need a little bit more, then you go maybe every 4 miles or every 3 miles. But start conservatively and then branch out a little bit from there. But it's always best to start with less, see how your body responds, and then if you need more, increase rather than doing too much and having to cut back, if that makes sense. But it is an important component. Fueling is very, very important, and leading up to your marathon as well. Fueling, resting, having a good balanced diet, putting the right fuels into your body. All of it's important. Okay. And then how you do it. Sleeping is important as well. Everything needs to be consistent. And that's the key. Because again, going back to the marathon itself, you have to be as precise as possible or as consistent as possible, because the marathon, if you have an off day and you drop out of 20 miles, you can't come back the following week and expect to be recovered and do it again like you would a 5K. This is different. So doing the little things become that much more important. And the speed fart, like I'll mention this too, the speed fart like helps with that speed development, helps make you more efficient stride. Okay, helps keep your body up, your posture upright, become more energy efficient. Okay, keep a lower kind of center of gravity, so that you're not bouncing up and down. And that's an important component as well. Staying as even as possible, and a speed fart like helps you do it. It helps open up your stride. Okay, helps you become more efficient. And the longer the race becomes, like half marathon and marathon, the more important efficiency becomes. And energy conservation. The key is conserving energy and staying as efficient as possible. The last thing you want is your form to break down in a marathon. So something to keep in mind as well. How many gels? I mean, on that, yeah, that's what I would do. Start at every 5 miles and then one every 5 miles and then work from there if you feel you need more. It's an individual, it really is an individual thing, but that's kind of a good starting point. FG, how to adjust for heat and humidity. It's tough, man, because if you're training for the fall, if you're training for the fall marathon, most of your training is going to be in the heat, right? But the best time to do your runs would be in the morning, because you're coming off after the sun not being out for 10 to 12 hours. So not only is the weather the coolest, but the surface on the ground is the coolest too, which remember goes upward, the heat. So instead of doing stuff at night where it's been sunny and heat all day, you do it in the morning if you can, where it's the coolest. The best time to take advantage of your long runs and workouts for the marathon. The absolute best time, because again, the ground surface is the coolest where it's going to be, and the weather is the coolest it's going to be, and it's both together. So, and remember, most marathons are in the morning anyway. So these are morning, Dan. Good morning. Best run. I appreciate that, Samir. Thank you, man. I want to keep this. I want to do more live streams like this, so you guys have direct access to me. And I want to kind of be, I want to try to branch out. I want to get to like 2,500 or 5,000 subscribers, because I feel like I can help a lot of people. So feel free to share my channel with other people. Tell people it's out there. I mean, I want to spread the word. So, and again, 20 plus years of coaching experience. My goal now is to give back. I've got 200 plus videos on training. So, I'm here to help people. So, and everybody should have access to this content, not only the super fast people. So, appreciate it, Samir. Yeah, I'm trying to get more subscribers. I mean, I have an Instagram page now called Top of the Line Running, which is kind of the same as this running channel. So I'm trying to promote it wherever I can. But anybody who's willing to spread the word, it's greatly appreciated. Best, richest, most complete. Yeah, I mean that's my goal, is to have the most complete and complete kind of running channel in terms of content out there, give the most details possible. So. Last time you were involved in a long time ago, probably 20 years, I had to defend myself, unfortunately, in the street coming from a concert. I like to keep it that way. So it didn't work well for the guys that tried mugging me. I'll just leave it at that. But given a choice between hills intervals and 3.2 miles at marathon pace, minus 10 seconds, which is a better overall? With 6 weeks to go, hill repeats, I'll generally keep it early to mid-season. and then transition to stuff like this, 3.2 miles at marathon pace minus 10 seconds. That would be the mid to late season workout. If you, let's just say you have 18 weeks and 3 blocks of 6 weeks each. The hills would be in the first. Hill repeats would be in the first section. Those types of workouts like this would be in the second and part of the third session as well. And those hill repeats, I would transition into hilly speed fartleks and hilly, adding to some hills in the long runs and stuff like that. I would not abandon hills at any point in time because they're a good strength builder. I would just transition it a little bit differently throughout the marathon training. Hopefully that makes sense. You can run 6 times sub 6:30 mile repeats. What should be your goal finish time for marathon? Depends on your recovery. It depends on what else you're doing, how you respond to your long runs. That 6 times sub 6:30, you're looking at probably 7:30 pace maybe for the marathon, but that's provided everything else is going well. Your long runs are going well, other things are going well, because this could essentially mean you're really well positioned for a half marathon, necessarily a marathon yet. So marathon's a different beast than a half. So mile repeats are just one type of workout. That's why I mentioned the longer runs and progression runs, because they give you a good idea on how ready you are. Ziad, I appreciate it, man. Thank you. Coach, how to deal with a bald spot? Bald spot, I have no idea. I buzz my hair. I shave my head, so I don't know. I take a full and just buzz everything off. Dan Mills, 15 5K runners would benefit from a marathon training block. Depends if you're I think 15-minute 100-meter to 5K runners would benefit from a certain things with regard to marathon training. A little bit of a longer long run, they come in handy for the middle distance runners like that. Even a longer tempo. You have aerobic threshold and anaerobic threshold. Anaerobic threshold is 20 to 25 minutes, and then an aerobic threshold itself is 30 to 60 minutes. Those might be beneficial to you. Not necessarily a full marathon training block, and then coming back to 1500 to 5K. You can incorporate marathon type stuff with different emphasis, and that way you're not abandoning 1500 to 5K training. And I would never do anyway. That's why I like incorporating some of the longer stuff about maintaining the focus to help you build a little bit more of a strength foundation there. Do I still run or have you stop? I run on occasion. I do a lot of functional training, a lot of martial arts. I stay fit, but I don't run as much as I did before. I've got 2 little daughters, so they keep me busy. So, Eric, have I tried to block the conversion of tests? I don't even know what that is, Eric. FG, how to distinguish between fatigue and overtraining. Look at your heart rate in the morning. How well you're recovering from runs, how are you, and also training at the right pace. Are you incorporating regular rest into your training to avoid overtraining? Regular rest, like an off day every week or every other week or something like that. Also, ways to make sure that you're not doing that is periodization. Do not increase training intensity and volume at the same time. Okay, one or the other. And also do not increase your overall weekly volume by more than 10% at any point in time. And you stay there for an extended period of time. Your body has to adapt to everything. So it's important to give that. Erica, I don't know, man. Sorry about the hair loss. I don't know, man. Like I said, I just buzzed my head. So feel free to buzz, dude. I don't know. Dan, progression long runs are key, man. Could you dive into how to, progression long runs, it also depends on where you're at, but like, let's just say you're in the middle of a marathon training cycle. I mentioned this earlier, let's just say your goal marathon is 3:30, which is 8 minutes. I'm just using a flat number. Progression long run, essentially, you can start from like 9:30 by 90 seconds slower per mile, and then progress towards marathon pace over time. So let's just say it's a 15-mile long run, right? And we'll break it up into that 90-second interval. So that first one, that first 5 miles will be between 9:30 and 9 minutes. The second one between 9 minutes and 8:30. The last one between 8:30 and 8 minutes. A gradual progression towards marathon pace. That'd be a good way to do a progression long run. And again, those would generally be mid-season or earlier to mid-season. And then you start to incorporate more marathon pace as you start to approach the marathon. Hopefully that's helpful. So yeah, 20-mile long with 12 at marathon pace in a peak week of 65 miles. Is that a high level of confidence that I can run in? If you're running 12 at marathon pace in a 20-mile long run, that's a good indicator that you're close to being ready. Where in the long run are you doing it? In the middle, towards the end, because you need to know what it feels like towards the end too to beat marathon pace. So, another good long run is 20 miles, with 10 miles, or the last 10 miles of it at marathon pace or goal marathon pace. So, but again, these are the types of long runs. I wouldn't do these once you get to about 4 weeks out for the marathon. I would stop doing. That's the last time I would do a 20-mile long run, 4 weeks out, and then you start to cut back a little bit on the long run itself, but you maintain marathon pace or slightly faster than marathon pace, so that you're in that mode now of marathon pace within the long run. That's kind of a final cycle there. Dimitri, if I can run 10 miles easy and followed by 10 and slightly faster than marathon goal pace, then does it mean I'm ready to execute 26 based on your experience with you? If you're able to do 10 and 10 like that, you're probably not that far off. That's why, I mentioned a simulation run too. If you can do 15 miles at goal marathon pace, or just very slightly faster, no more than 5 seconds per mile faster, at about 4 weeks out, if there's no half marathon available, that gives you a really good idea how ready you are, and it'll give you a good confidence boost too. How often should core be done on the weekly? Probably twice a week. Core, no more than 3 times. How many marathons you advise to race in 1 year? Depends on where you're at. If you're looking to just run them, if you're looking to run them relatively fast, I generally don't recommend more than 2 in a year. That way the body can recover. And I also like to do, kind of a different phase in between to let you kind of do some 5K to half marathon training as well to help act as speed development as well, with a little bit lower volume, which is a complementary component to marathon training. That way you're getting a little bit more speed and you can transition upward. And then after you do a marathon, it acts as a strength base so you can move downward and kind of keep improving in both areas if you can, because they do complement each other. So they do. So I have a question, guys. I'm going to do another video in a couple of days. What kind of video would you like? What kind of training video would you like me to do? Middle distance, half marathon, other types of. You just want to go over workouts. Give me an idea of what you want me to do. I'm going to continue. I'm going to try to do 1 live stream per week. If we can do that. How many sub 5-mile repeats did you run? Probably 6 or 7, Samir. Something like that. Tune-up marathon race before I go. I necessarily wouldn't do a tune-up marathon in a marathon training cycle. I would do a tune-up half marathon. It's a better. You recover better from it because it's part of and allows you to kind of continue your training. Specific sub 330. All right, I will do my next video will be a sub 330. Samir, and I'll do that. I'll do that in a couple of days, so be on the lookout for that. I will do a specific sub 330, and we can even go over. I'll break down the cycles for you. I use my sub 330 training video, and I can break it down for you there. So if you haven't watched it, take a look at it on my channel, and you'll see an exact sub 330 training plan, and then we'll go over that one. So, and so yeah, I will talk about periodization in that video as well, so that it all kind of comes together and makes sense. So I'm going to wrap this up, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Be on the lookout for the sub 330. If you have more questions, put them in the comments of the actual video or reach out to me directly, blackbeltrunningcoach@gmail.com, or check out the page Top of the Line Running on Instagram. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you next time.